Ladies, do not let him use you. Take back your freaking power and identify these red flags. He keeps avoiding talking about your future together. All right, guys, I don't know about you, but sometimes I personally can get a little sensitive to things. So if it was me and I was really, really interested in this guy and I really wanted to talk about my future and he avoids it, I may take that personally. Now, the reason why I want to start here, the reason why I want to start with this is because the very first thing you need to do is just make sure you're not being too sensitive to it. Because maybe you're like on edge every time you bring it up, you're waiting to see what he says. But sometimes maybe his mindset isn't in that space. So sometimes maybe he's on soccer. And so you ask him a question, he's thinking about soccer, and now he dismisses you and you make that about you. So what I would do is actually step number one is I would put my suspicion to the test. Now guys, there's a big difference between actually putting someone to the test or putting yourself to the test. So I actually don't agree on putting your partners and testing them. That actually feels it's a little unfair, but I absolutely do understand and believe in testing out my own hypothesis, testing out my own way of thinking or seeing things, because sometimes I've got on a different lens. Or even, let me just say this, what if it's the time of the month? Sometimes I'm more sensitive than others. So sometimes someone one day can actually say, oh my God, you look amazing. I'm like, oh, thanks. And then the next day, because I'm feeling vulnerable, someone says, you look amazing. My instinct is to say, what? So I didn't look good yesterday? So you need to start with assessing your suspicion to actually see if this red flag that you are spotting is accurate or not. Right, okay, once you've done that, once you've asked some questions time and time again, just ask, drop in a question here and there and see how they respond. Do it at a time where they're not distracted. Now, after you've done that 1, 2, 3 times, you can actually step back and assess if you're accurate or if it's just your imagination. All right, now let's just assume that your assessment is accurate, because if it's your imagination, now you can self-soothe and go, oh my God, it was my period. Oh my God, that was my hormones making me feel like that. If you see that it's accurate and that actually they are absolutely freaking avoiding the question or the conversation about the future, this is that moment, guys, that I would recommend be utterly freaking transparent with them, because here's the truth. You may not like it, but here's the absolute truth. There's a big difference between someone liking you in the moment, it's like, I'm really having fun, and someone saying, I want to move in with you, let's have a future together. So even if, I'm going to drop this little caveat here, even if they may not be ready to move in or have a future, that actually doesn't mean that they don't like you now. It doesn't mean they're actually using you. But you need to know, you want to know. So what you do is you ask the questions so that you can actually then assess how you would like to react. Because look, if they're not looking for a future and you are, at least you know. But I beg of you, separate the two of, do they want a commitment with, do they actually like you now? All right, now that you've done that, you're going to be transparent with them. You're going to say to them in communication, hey, I'm actually really enjoying this relationship right now. I'm really feeling the vibe. And I would love to really discuss, what are you looking for in a week? What are you looking for in a month? What are you looking for in a year? And I'd love to have that same conversation with you and tell you about my dreams and where I can see this going. Don't come at them. Talk to them, guys. Talk to them. Speak to them on a level where you're actually really wanting to have a discussion. If you come at them and like, hey, look, every time I bring up the future, you keep avoiding me. Where does that leave them to go except for putting up walls? So to get what you actually want out of this whole thing, to actually know if they are using you or not, be open to having the discussion without coming at them. And then you can ask the questions on how they feel about you now and if they see a future with you or not. By separating the two, by asking all your questions, you're getting utter clarity on where they see this situation, where they see this relationship, where they see you guys going. Now, when you're asking these questions, if they keep bloody avoiding it, if they keep dodging it, if you ask one question here or you're interested and you're not coming at them and they still back off and they still shut down and they still go silent, then I'm just going to be freaking honest, guys, that is a red flag. And now at least you know. And you can deal with the situation accordingly. It is up to you now whether you continue having that relationship knowing that they are avoiding even the discussion of a future with you. And now knowing that, at least you're not beating your head over like against a freaking brick wall in 6 months because you are still in that situation. You at least know that you went into it agreeing to the fact that they are trying to dodge the question, and so you're not going to be surprised in 5 months or 6 months because you've got your answer now and you've decided to either leave that relationship or continue. Either way, it is in your hands and in your control. Now, there's no more them freaking using you because you get to decide. He won't freaking introduce you to his friends or his family. All right, guys, I'm going to start by saying it's not all about you. Just because you may feel the reluctancy for them to actually want to introduce you to their friends and family, don't immediately go to it must be about you, that you're bad, that they're embarrassed about you. Stop that spiraling thought. Step back and give the person the grace to maybe have a past experience that has led them to act this way. You have no idea. I have no idea. There may be 1,000 reasons why they are so worried about introducing you. Maybe they had a past experience where they introduced it and all of a sudden this person ended up using them and breaking their family's heart, and their mum got really sad after their relationship broke up. And so now he's actually just trying to protect his mum because he doesn't want his mum to get upset. I don't know. That was just one reason that I threw out there. There could be 1,000. So don't just jump to, they're embarrassed about me, they're ashamed of me, they don't think this is going to last as a relationship. Maybe it's true, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's not. Now, how the hell are you going to know? You've got to ask. You've got to be transparent. You've got to be upfront. Because let's face it, what if they actually do have a valid reason to not introduce you? Don't you actually want to hear that? Don't you want to hear their vulnerability? Don't you want to hear their concerns? Don't you want to hear their real deep reasoning why they're worried? If you can actually show them the grace and not just come at them and make it all about you and say, hey, look, actually, I'd really love to meet your friends and family. It really gives me an idea of who you are, and it really gives me a glimpse into where you've been. And like, it would mean so much to me. But I'm actually getting the sense right now that you're a little reluctant to. And I'd love to just understand why. Maybe it's because you're just not that into me. And look, while that stings to actually hear, I'd rather know the truth than sit and hope and us actually not being on that same page. Because right now where I am, I would love for you to meet my friends and family. I don't want to press you. I actually want to understand why you're not ready so that we can navigate this together. Now they feel like they have a voice. They feel like they've got a space to actually be honest with you. And in those moments, guys, of asking them the questions and being transparent, you can get the truth out of them. Now, look, I'm just going to do another caveat. If they freaking lied to you, then you know what to do. They've lied to you. If they're like, oh yeah, to be honest, I don't see any future. That's why I'm not introducing them to my friends and family. At least you know. But the key here is to stop letting that voice in your head, that negativity that's probably spiraling, flipping the F out of how much them not introducing you to their friends and family says about you. Don't do that to yourself, guys. You're freaking badass. You're freaking awesome. And if they don't want to introduce you to their friends or family, that's on them. Believe in yourself, believe in who you are, believe in what you bring to this freaking relationship, and now you have the power. Now, guys, you are freaking taking the power back, and you are making decisions in this relationship that suit you. He shows zero consideration for your feelings. This is a non-negotiable for me. This is a non-negotiable. I literally won't be in a relationship where my partner doesn't care about my feelings. What? Guys, you just have to make a demand of yourself. You just have to make a demand that you are so much better. You're worth so much freaking more than being with someone that doesn't care about your feelings. So start with embracing and saying out loud, this is a non-negotiable. So now you've set the boundary. You know that this is a non-negotiable, that having someone caring about your feelings is imperative for my relationship. Amazing. Now you've made that statement. Now you have to assess whether they are the person that is actually dismissing your feelings or not. Now, again, I'm going to keep beating this over head like a hammer, but I'm telling you guys, the very first thing that I do is assess whether I'm being too sensitive, whether I'm imagining something. Because let's face it, we all bring a shit ton of baggage with us. Whenever we are seeing things, making decisions, experiencing something, it all comes with our experience. Maybe you've been shut down as a kid. time and time again, every time you went to say your feelings. So now maybe that is a big trigger of yours, that the second you go to say your feeling, if someone doesn't respond in a very specific way, you immediately interpret it like they don't care. Now look, don't beat yourself up over it. Don't judge yourself for being that way. Just make sure that you assess and be honest with yourself about whether this is a trigger, whether you're being too sensitive, or whether they really are being the worst freaking partner and being dismissive to your feelings. Now that you've done that, guys, it all comes back down to intention. It all comes down to intention. Because let's face it, guys, while we all may have the best intentions at heart, it doesn't mean that we're always going to nail it. And in particular, I don't want to be gender specific, but at least in my experience, my hubby sometimes has all the amazing intentions in the world. Like, for instance, the very first Christmas we spent together, he said, "What do you want for Christmas?" And I was like, "Oh, I've been hinting to you." So then he's like, "Oh, I know what it is. I've absolutely nailed it." Christmas comes, it's Christmas morning, I open the gift. I was hinting for a watch. He got me teeth whitening strips. You heard that right, guys. I was hinting for a watch and he got me teeth whitening strips. So the point is that someone's intention may completely miss the freaking mark. So if you're sensing that they are dismissing your feelings, the very first thing to figure out is, do they intend to do it or not? If they don't intend, then the amazing thing is now you can work through it. Now you can communicate with each other. Now you can discuss it. But if they absolutely intended to dismiss you, they don't care about your feelings, what did I just say? It's a non-freaking negotiable. I'm out the door. Goodbye. Adios. I'm on my way. So that is the big freaking key. Do they intend to dismiss you? Now, as you start to talk to them about it and say, look, maybe you don't mean to, maybe you've got past experiences, but right now I'm feeling a little vulnerable, or right now, I'm noticing that every time I say my feelings, like I kind of feel like you don't listen. And maybe it's because you're busy, I really want to respect that, but you know what, every time you don't listen, it actually makes me feel disrespected. Actually, don't use the word disrespected because now their defense is going to go up. So use the word, it makes me feel unheard. Those little differences between the word you use will make all the difference on how they respond. Again, remember, if this is a partner that you want to try and build a relationship with, a long-term relationship with, you don't just want to keep coming at them like they've done something wrong. But you do want to communicate. So that's what you're going to do here. You're going to communicate and figure out what their intentions are. And then I'm just going to go back to the fact that if their intention was to dismiss you, adios, peace, I'm out of here. What up, homie? I got something free and new to share with you right now. How often are you visited by that negative voice in your head telling you that you're not smart enough, that you're not good enough, experienced enough, not fill in the blank? One of the most powerful things you can learn to do in life is to turn that negative voice into your bestie. And I want to teach you how to do that and so much more in my 4 steps to becoming confident workshop. And guys, the most amazing thing is you can actually register for completely free for this workshop. So click the link on your screen and I'll see you on the inside. All he does is take. Is he just taking, and never wants to give? Or are you bad at saying no? So you keep giving and giving and giving, and he's good at setting the boundaries. This actually does, guys, become an assessment of 2 things. 1, how does he respond? How is he acting? How is he showing up? And 2, how are you acting? How are you responding? How are you showing up? Because here's the thing, maybe he is taking and taking and taking. The truth is, maybe you just need to get better at saying no. I'm here to tell you, with all the love in my heart, I'm saying this to help. Maybe you have to get better at saying no. Maybe you just keep saying yes to something. Now, here's the thing. That's not on him. That is on you. You need to set that boundary because let's face it, if they know that you're going to keep saying yes, they're going to keep coming to you. So if you set the boundary, if you can actually honestly assess how you keep showing up, if you just keep saying yes because it becomes a way for you to people please, you've got to address that. So it's going to be imperative for you to look at, is it the fact that you're actually really bad at setting boundaries? Guys, it's okay. I don't mean that as an insult. And I really don't mean that for you to feel badly about yourself. I actually mean that because for me, in order to set boundaries, I had to assess where I was in my boundary setting game. And the truth was I was terrible. And I just had to admit it. And then I had to work on how on earth I was going to start to show up, to be able to put myself first, to be able to say no to things. And so guys, I'm just saying, like, that's where we need to start. You have to actually assess, is this a you thing? Do you just keep saying yes to things that actually don't serve you? That's number one. And then number two, it's very, very freaking possible that actually he's just deliberately taken advantage of you. Now, that's very, very possible. But what I'm going to say, guys, is freaking powerful if you let it. They can only take what you're willing to give them. Let me repeat that. They can only take what you're willing to give them. So take your freaking power back, look at the situation, and assess if they are taking too much. That is the first sign, homie, that you need to stop giving or leave the relationship or accept it. But one way or another, you have the amazing power to make that decision. He threatens to end the relationship. Oh, hell to the no. Guys, let me tell you, someone using a fear tactic in your relationship is a big freaking red flag. I'm telling you, they're trying to threaten. They're trying to bring up the fear in you. They're trying to trap you. So let's just be real freaking honest and upfront and say the fear tactic of threatening to leave the relationship so that you can try and manipulate me. Hell to the no! Guys, recognizing and just stating utter fact and demanding, putting in freaking concrete your pole or your flag and saying, I will not do this. I will not engage in a relationship that uses fear tactics to get me to stay. In fact, that was so powerful, I'm going to quickly rewind it and replay it. I will not do this. I will not engage in a relationship that uses fear tactics to get me to stay. So now that you've actually just declared that, guys, the very first step in having this discussion with them, in making sure they realize this is non-negotiable, that you are not going to be in a relationship that uses fear tactics, the very first thing I'm going to say is approach it with grace. With grace. Because here's the thing. Maybe your partner grew up in a household where all they saw every single day were their parents throwing threats at each other. Now, what have they done? They've learned their behavior. It doesn't necessarily mean that they actually see how destructive that can be. It just may mean that they've been taught a very, very bad habit that is now becoming detrimental to your relationship. So I'm always going to, step number one is come into that discussion with grace, maybe assuming that he's learned it from someone, but being so freaking uber honest about that line. Give them the benefit of the doubt, but be uber freaking clear about the fact that that's not okay. Be uber freaking clear about the fact that they do not get to threaten you in your relationship. So when I actually met my husband, one of the very first agreements we had was the fact that we would never ever threaten each other and leave in that relationship. We literally pinky swore, guys, but we vocalized it, we acknowledged it, we agreed to it. So that's what I'm trying to do right now. I want you to vocalize that. I want you to be very honest with your partner, set that boundary, make it uber clear, make sure that they understand why. And now it's a wait and see game. I freaking hate it, but it is. It's basically you set the boundary, you let them know why, you agree to it, and then you see if they do it again. If they do it again, then maybe once was a mistake. And you can say, hey, look, maybe you didn't mean to, and I really appreciate all the effort you're doing to really stick to this boundary of not threatening me. But every time you do, every time you threaten leaving the relationship, it causes anxiety in me. And to be honest, I'm going to be very upfront. Causing anxiety in your partner isn't a way to bond together. And baby, I really want to bond with you. So please, if I can request once more that you do not say this. And if they do it the second time, that's when you just become very clear and say, look, I've already let you know twice. And so this is becoming very detrimental to me and to my mindset and to our relationship. And I just don't see a world where our relationship can actually work if we're not able to get through this struggle. All right, now you've been honest, now you've told them, you've been very clear. That will eliminate, guys, that anxiety you have where someone throws something at you and you feel like you're freaking powerless, right? When they're saying to you like, oh, well, if you do that, I'm out of here. All of a sudden, you feel freaking powerless. And that's the whole point. That's the whole point of this whole freaking episode, guys, is don't you dare give your power away. When you see all these red flags, you have the ability, you have the strength, you have the freaking badassery to assess the red flag, to see why it exists, and then you decide whether or not you're going to accept it or not. That's what this is about. That's why you set a boundary. That's why you become very clear every step of the way. He shuts down every time you go to talk about his feelings. Now, on my first date with my hubby, guys, this was something I actually didn't struggle with. On that first date, my husband was an open book. We had discussions about why I believed in God. He told me that openly, just like with no shame, that he like watched porn. Like he just says this in a restaurant on our first date. And it was like how open and like freeing he was so beautiful that he definitely didn't have any problem in being open and honest. Now, there are some people though, just like we all know, even people in our families, not even like partners. A lot of people say to me, Lisa, I love that you're so vulnerable. And it's because I say on camera that I've got a bitch in my head that's always mean to me and cruel. It's so easy for me to say. But with other people, when I'm like, well, that's hard for you to say. And they're like, yeah, that's like, it's very vulnerable for me to say that I've got a negative voice. So you can just see in that situation, something that's super easy for me to say out loud, and I don't think twice. With someone else, it'll be petrifying or paralyzing to even admit that they have a negative voice. So when we're talking about feelings, when we're talking about vulnerability, don't just go into the fact that they're not into you. Don't just say, well, they're not opening up, so clearly they don't like me. Don't just go into the fact that maybe they're not opening up, so that's a big red flag. The very first thing to do is say, maybe their level of opening up and being vulnerable is different to mine. So now that that's a very big possibility, you definitely don't want to be coming at them with like, every time I go to talk to you about your feelings, you just don't, you're just so closed off, you never talk to me about it. Guys, I know the instinct may be to do that. I know the instinct may be to just like verbally vomit all your frustrations and the fact that they just don't share with you. But remember how you're coming across. If they really do have a problem with their vulnerability, their very last thing, the antithesis of what you should do is to go at them. Because now what's going to happen? They're just going to shut down even more. They're going to be even more scared to show their vulnerability. So the key is to create a space and to also show them time and time again that you're not going to use their vulnerability or their feelings against them. Because guys, let me tell you, that was actually one of the big things that me and my husband agreed on. That if we show our vulnerabilities, that no matter what situation, no matter what argument, no matter how much we disagree, you're never going to use this as a weapon. And so we just pinky swore that we'll never use vulnerability as a weapon. And now you have to show that time and time again. Trust takes time. It's like a house. You have to put one brick on top of the other. And so that's exactly what you need to do. You need to give them the space. You need to let them know that they are safe around you. And then you need to just show them that you're a person of your word. That over time, day in, day out, when they express their feelings, when they express their vulnerability, when you get into that big freaking screaming match, that you never use their vulnerability as a weapon. And over time, one or two things will happen, guys. One, they'll actually see that you're true to your word, and then they'll start to open up. Or two, there's just a block, and there's something going on where they are not comfortable being open with you. Now, maybe that is a sign of them and they need therapy. Or maybe it's a sign that they're just not into you enough to be close enough to you to share that vulnerability. Both could be true, guys. But the point here is to assess, have you laid the groundwork? Have you given them the space in order to show up and be vulnerable? And then over time, have you assessed whether this is a reflection of them or a reflection of your relationship with them? Either way, guys, the idea is that you are able to make the decision for yourself. He never freaking apologizes. When someone cannot bring themselves to apologize, guys, or say that they're sorry, the very first freaking thing that comes to my mind is, oh my God, they must be so insecure that by apologizing, they feel it's a reflection of them. That their ego is so freaking important that they can't bring themselves to say, I'm sorry. Now look, that's no bloody excuse. It just gives me an understanding of why. Because so much of the time, guys, I used to always make it about me. I used to make it about me. But now, guys, having interviewed so many amazing therapists on the couch behind me, I've learned that it's usually about them. So when someone doesn't apologize and it becomes almost comical, where they clearly have done something wrong and they still can't bring themselves to apologize, the very first thought now I have is, wow, they must be extremely insecure and they're trying to protect their ego. Now again, that doesn't mean I'm going to freaking tolerate it. That doesn't mean I'm ever going to be in a relationship where my partner can't bring themselves to apologize. Hell no, what kind of relationship is that? So I just go, okay, maybe it's about them, but there's no freaking way I'm going to tolerate being in a relationship where my partner doesn't apologize. And so what I would do is I would communicate that with them. I would be utterly freaking honest. And guys, I think sometimes we're not honest in these situations because we're worried about what the outcome is going to be. We're worried that if we say, hey, look, you don't apologize, that they're going to come at you. Maybe they gaslight you. Maybe they say, what do you mean? Of course I do. And now you start to question yourself. We've all been there. Sadly, most of us have. And so knowing that you're going to feel shitty about bringing it up, that maybe they're going to freaking gaslight you, is exactly why maybe you don't bring it up. But guys, just ask yourself this question right here, right freaking now. Do you want to be in a relationship where someone never apologizes? Make it binary, yes or no. Answer it right now. Come on, answer it, yes or no. Because if the answer is, no, I'm never going to be a part of a relationship, great. Now you've got nothing to lose by vocalizing to them that this is unacceptable. Either way, guys, you have to make a freaking declaration. You just got to say, you know what? Maybe it is about them, but I do not tolerate this in my relationship. Make the freaking demand. If you are willing to say you're sorry, to apologize, to make it up to someone, if you've actually done something wrong, you 1000% should and can demand that from your partner. I'm going to repeat that. If you're willing to say you're sorry and admit when you're wrong, because let's face it, when you admit when you're wrong, it still stings. It doesn't feel great. But even when you do, you're still willing to show up in service of that relationship. You're willing to show up and put your freaking ego aside in order so that you can have a relationship with your partner that feels like a back and forth, that feels like it's equal. But if your partner isn't doing that, if your partner isn't willing to put their ego aside, even once you've spoken to them, and even once you've told them, hey, look, this isn't a relationship I want to be in, now at least you know. Now you can see their actions and know that their ego is more important than your relationship. That, my friends, is not only the red flag waving, but it's the red flag waving and slapping you in the face. So don't turn your back, don't freaking ignore it. Be open about the expectation and do not, no matter what, tolerate the fact that someone isn't willing to apologize to you. Put that boundary in, do the line in the sand, make it clear what your expectations are, and if they still are unwilling to put their ego aside, then you know what you're gonna do. Peace.
You can be the total package at the wrong address. So just because you're single does not mean that there is something off within you. If you're not careful over time, you will internalize that messaging